Hello, good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Good morning, I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, we do have some breaking news coming through. There is a gas explosion. It's actually Best Roof gas plant along Candos Road, Barua, Ikpaja. It is on fire at the moment. We don't know about the casualty figures as yet, but we do understand that the explosion occurred around 5:45 a.m. today, as we are told. And at the moment, we understand Lasema say they've activated several units of theirs to get on hand and ensure that they do what they can first to quell the fire. So there you go. So if you don't have anyone who may be already en route to that area, of course there will be a huge tailback of traffic, so they may not get that information as of yet. So you might as well just reach out to someone, and then of course if you plan to, if that's your route, you may have to seek an alternative route at this point, such that you ease the job that they've got to do to see how they could quell that. So it's an unfortunate one. The Best Roof gas plant exploded at about 5:45 a.m. and Lasema have activated their units to see what they can do to quell that. So as much as you can, just stay away from the area.
It's barely a few weeks that we had something similar. Well, this was more of a tanker, but it was a gas explosion nonetheless. And now we're having a gas station on fire. It happened very early in the morning. You can imagine the rude shock that people woke up to. For some of them, they said they tried to reach out to emergency lines for a while, and they didn't get response. And that's a tale we hear time and again when it comes to emergencies such as this. As you said, we don't quite know about the casualty figures. There are fears, of course, seeing the amount of fire at this level. You imagine what can happen. But it's good to know that the men of the fire service, I saw policemen also on scene, trying to, first of all, control the crowd, because you see a lot of people trying to get shots of it to put on social media such that they can put out content. But, at this time, it's important not to throw caution to the wind.
And more importantly for me would be, let us see how we can nip this in the bud as much as possible. Guys, we had one reported in April 2018, December 2019. We've had one reported early this year. You talked about one a few weeks ago. And the ones that I just talked about now, most of them happen in and around Barua, the same Barua area. So I think that it calls for a lot more work.
All right, so we're just hoping that as we see how the country is trying to progress to making use of CNG and ensure that all of those facilities are in place, safety, to say the least, should be topmost in all those considerations. So we don't know if DPR will begin having second thoughts, think again in terms of the safety measures, the requirements, the standards that have to be in place for anyone to site any of those facilities in any of those areas, because now you could imagine it's about 5:45 a.m. So there are schools around there, houses around there. Your guess would be as good as ours in terms of what could have happened.
You talked about the casualty figures, of course. If you go to the social media you mentioned, one is already been reported. So.
Well, we're just hoping that we'd like to hope for the best as always as we can. All right, so we'll get you more details from that as we do get them. So right away, we're going to go ahead and take a look at how are the dailies reflecting what has happened, of course, yesterday, and perhaps what do we expect today. We've got Mr. Abimbola Toki, editor of Business World, joining us this morning to take us through some of those headlines. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure to be here.
Okay, let's start off with Nigerian Tribune. They are following up, the National Assembly, incidentally, are having a look into this. SARS, it's a name that many will not forget in a hurry. Look at the lead story on the front page of Nigerian Tribune. SARS, Senate probes human rights abuses. Lawan warns against units scrapping. Reps to amend constitution to halt police brutality. Protesters oppose reform, call for scrapping. They want a extreme measure. So scrapping, reforms. What do you think?
Banning.
Well, every security measure put in place by the government is a worthwhile effort, but what they do is another thing entirely. SARS is a good step. At least they have their areas of concentration. And what I want to say at this moment is, it's not that SARS in itself is bad, but there are bad elements in every good establishment. We can't say because there are bad elements there, the whole structure should be scrapped. What I think should be paramount at this moment is to be able to fish out the bad elements and prosecute them. Because
so no scrapping for you?
What do you say?
No scrapping for you?
No. I can't say scrap because there are, within the structure, there are those who are very, very good, who are doing what they're supposed to do, who have achieved a lot in that area. So if you scrap them, you are telling those people who those people who know what they are doing to go and do something else, whereas they are contributing effectively to ensuring that the purpose for which it is set up is actually achieved. I think what should be done is to strengthen that structure to ensure that those bad eggs are identified and they prosecute them as it were. And
speaking about bad eggs, there's this other story just above this lead story. Customs nabbed Dubai-based passenger with 5,342 ATM cards in Kano. So you wonder, 5,342? There must be something going on.
Oh my God. It's quite alarming. 500, come on. What is it doing with that? You know, I think some Nigerians are just giving us bad names. They are just bent on doing what is so unnecessary, what is unheard of. What will the person do with 500 or
5,000
ATM cards? It's senseless.
There's a scheme going on here.
Oh yeah.
I've heard about the narrative, but
you remember I think it was last month.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. This one was 2,000. Yeah. About 2,000.
This is the highest so far in recent times. Over 5,000 of them, and the stories we hear about. Well,
it also behoves on the security of the country, at least to be proactive. You know, when you get to arrest them at the point of implementation rather than execution, I think it will send signals to those who are in that clique.
From a technology and business point of view, where do you think they got these kinds of cards from?
Of course, you know, daily pickpocketing, you know, harassment on the road. People lose ATMs on daily basis, in traffic, in hold-ups, you know, on the highways, you know, so many avenues whereby people lose their ATM cards, not only ATM card, cash, and so many other things.
All right.
I've been a victim before, right CMS junction, around 12 in the afternoon. Somebody just knocked on my door and said, bring your cash, bring your 12. I was waiting for the traffic light.
Cool.
So it's alarming. It's just simply.
This is how many years ago, by the way?
That was last year.
I think they will get. I think they will get more in terms of where they got this cards from. If they go to page 39 and see this, you know. But then you also have several other stories in terms of how COVID is hitting households. So that's Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Next up is the Vanguard newspaper. Big story. Brutality, rights abuses. NAS moves against SARS. That's how Vanguard puts it this morning. But take a look at the writers. As Senate probes human rights abuses by operatives, others urges IGP to arrest, prosecute security personnel involved in extrajudicial killings. Reps unveil 30-day plan to tackle police brutality. A lot of people are looking forward to that. Probe alleged criminal activities of police unit to work with NBA, CSOs, others to draft new legislation to curtail SARS excesses. But there's more. impose strict disciplinary measures on area officers. And you see the hashtag #EndSARS. Pop stars not backing down on planned protests. Phew, I know we've touched on this, but clearly this is still a big deal. And I think it's important that we don't take our eyes off this, especially the fact that it's not just SARS. I mean, the Nigeria police, there's a new act in force right now, so you wonder how much this is going to impact on their operations. But the front page of the Vanguard shows that flooded Swali market in Yenagua, and it's interesting that people are still in that market, conducting their business. Talk about the resilience of Nigeria. But right on top of the nameplate, I'd like to get your reaction to this. FGOK's 654 million naira to monitor frequencies in Southeast. You may have seen that story. But you see this one from Mahanese saying, this is misplaced priority. More details on page 13. So clearly the federal government says, well, there are some illegal frequencies operating in some parts of the country, and they've budgeted 654 million naira to monitor these frequencies. What are your thoughts?
Well, it is one thing to set up a structure. It is another thing to ensure that the structure works. I think monitoring is one area that the country is lagging behind, and one can only implore the government to do more in this regard. There are so many establishments, there are so many ventures that have been established, but when you get there, they are not even doing what they're supposed to do. They are not contributing effectively or positively and to ensuring that the purpose for which they are established is achieved. So monitoring is key, and in every and all establishments of the government should be adequately monitored to ensure that they do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
This frequency thing is, monitoring of the frequency is very, very key, because if they don't monitor it very well, you see a lot of interferences and a lot of jammings and all that. I think is a good step in the right direction.
Okay, and this one, not good news really. According to a report, households record 69% decline in income. That's over half. You wonder what's responsible. I'm thinking COVID-19, but it's on page 19, interestingly, of the Vanguard newspaper. But let me just get your take on this before we leave the Vanguard newspaper. Measures for peaceful, credible poll in place. That's, of course, ahead of Ondo governorship election in 2 days. And that's credited to President saying that measures for peaceful, credible poll in place. But from what you have seen so far, the build-up, some of the violence, and of course the peace pact that was signed, any predictions?
Yes, I predict that Ondo state election will be peaceful. I think all efforts are geared towards ensuring that. We are just coming out of what happened in Edo State, and which gladdens one's heart, that votes counted, and the personality that people wanted to win actually won that election. I think it's a good signal that one day Nigeria will get it right. As a matter of fact, and you also know we have also listened to the candidate of the other political party that is not going to election tribunal. I look forward to a day in Nigeria when there will be, after general election, there won't be any single election petition in this country. We are moving towards that area, and I can't wait to see that period coming to to this part of the world, where election petitions are no longer necessary after major elections. I think what happened in Edo will be replicated in Ondo election. What I'm not sure of is if the party that lost in Edo now wins in Ondo, whether that would now be seen as a fraud. That is left to be seen.
Especially because there are two senior advocates really in that race.
There are two Nale friends.
All right, but that's a Vanguard for you this morning.
The Daily Times newspaper, is also interested in what's happening as far as the SARS is concerned in the National Assembly. National Assembly wades into killings by SARS find that story on page 2 of the Daily Times newspaper this morning. And of course, we've touched on that quite significantly. That flooding story is the picture story you see right there on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper. Appointments: Kaduna State Governor El Rufai appoints Ahmed Bamali as 19th Emir of Zazzau. Stock Exchange: Nigerian Stock Exchange holds bullish trend, indices down by 0.95%. And FEC approves $3.02 billion for Port Harcourt Maiduguri Railway. Of course, I expect that's going to generate some reaction. The story is on page 4. But what I'd like you to say a word or two on is the editorial of the Daily Times newspaper this morning. Need to revisit policy on border closure. Of course, you remember that the land borders were closed about a little over a year ago, based on reasons of, general goods, ammunition, and pharmaceutical products that were being smuggled into the country, so to speak. What's your take on this need? Do you think it's time for us to open up, or wait a little while?
Yeah, as a media practitioner, I agree absolutely on the need for, on the need to revisit policy on border closure. We shouldn't close borders just basically because we feel big, or we feel we are the biggest in Africa, or we are the biggest in the Sub-Sahara, or we are the biggest in West Africa. Border closure should be seen. Whenever such action is taken, we should be able to see the reason, cogent reason why that is taking place. Not just because of for political reasons. When you close border for political reasons, you are neglecting other economic reasons. So there's need for proactive measures in terms of what happens in our borders, not only about whether you are big or not. What is happening in those borders is also very, very, very important. Our borders are porous. Even when you visit some of these places, you see the security agents that are there. They look unserious. Even the way they dress is nothing to write home about. I think there's supposed to be a holistic view on all our borders to ensure that they actually deliver on what they're supposed to deliver to the economy of Nigeria.
Well, Daily Independent is next. The Senate approves plan to borrow 4.28 trillion naira in 2021 budget. So this may take us back to that conversation as to borrowing here and borrowing there. Well, yes, but it also did talk about the budget deficit. It's supposed to support the 13.08 trillion naira 2021 budget deficit of 5.19 trillion naira. A huge difference between the deficit of 2020 now 2021. So back to this question of whether or not and how we should borrow, what we do with what we borrow.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. And I think media it's not about reporting what is borrowed. It's not about reporting that we're about to borrow. It also behoves on the media to follow up what is borrowed, especially the money that is borrowed, what they are being used for. Of course, all over the world, even American, countries all over the world, they borrow. There's nothing wrong in borrowing, but what the money that is borrowed is used for is actually our problem in this part of the world. Because I can't see any sense in when you borrow something and it ends up in private pocket. What it smacks wickedness. You are borrowing a huge amount of money, and before you know it, you begin to see it in private accounts. That is crazy, and I think I don't know what is wrong with us in Nigeria. You know, when you know that you borrow something and you can't use it to develop the lives of, what will benefit the lives of your citizens. So what is the essence of borrowing? There's no country that can live on its own. You have to borrow money to develop infrastructure. But when you now borrow and you use it for other things, fraud and not, I mean, it smacks wickedness, and I think that orientation need to change. And also, media also need to follow up. When money is borrowed, let's follow it up to what is being used for. Let's query them. There's FOIB. You know, let's query the actors, what they are using that money for, on monthly basis. We should be able to track what the money is being used for. So we also use this medium to challenge media practitioners, not only about reporting what is borrowed, but also tracking what the money is used for.
Well, yeah, that is equally the big one. I mean, the other day we saw ICPC come up with some reports about monies in private pockets. Then the Ministry of Education said, well, we'll set up a committee to look whether or not this is true. We'll work with ICPC. And you thought, look, as long as those guys will have no access to one kobo of public funds, because what is ICPC's report about? So what? Anyway, that's a different trajectory. But some good news. COVID-19 vaccine may be ready by December. That's from WHO, and I didn't go further to find out if it's Russia or whatever, but it says it may be ready by December. So something to check.
Yeah, of course, yeah, something to check. You know, we have waited for a very long time to see this happening, and honestly, all over the world, we can't wait for this to happen. As a matter of fact, one will have expected WHO to come out earlier than now, or to be able to have seen a vaccine for this purpose. But December is there, just about 2 months away. So we are all waiting, and we hope that it will work for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Nigerian News Direct leads with Senate orders probe of banks over illicit excessive charges. We're also waiting for that probe, right? Passes 2021 to 2023 MTEF FSP. Advocates merger of agencies and cautions FG on borrowing to fund projects. You know, there's always a lot of talk about these excessive charges. You see SMS charge, card maintenance charge. People say, wait, how about you just give me in-app notification for my SMSs so you don't have to charge me? Most people have their apps, right? So just send me that notification in the app. But you know what? That's another one for another day. But
you know how much they'll lose.
Because, I mean, that's cost effective. But you know what? That's free advice for the banks. I'll see if they take that up. But there's this one. Buhari, Osinbajo, Sanwo-Olu, APC governors storm Ondo for Akeredolu's re-election rally. Well, the president and the vice were there virtually. But when you look at the amount of governors that are in Ondo State right now, at least 12 governors are in Ondo State, according to reports. And you wonder, why? Is that a norm?
Politics.
I don't understand.
Well, it's politics. Much more number, I mean, a greater number was in Edo, and it doesn't prevent people from voting who they want. You know, politicians, that's their job. You know, so this is their season, and you expect all of them to be there. You know, to also, I mean.
But to be there for what, really?
To be there for what? Ask me. To be there for what?
I know, you're probably the wrong person to ask.
For politics, of course, but that will not prevent people from voting who they want to vote. So let them go there, enjoy themselves. But unfortunately, they are using the taxpayers' money to
I
do
think that's
some
a
of
concern
these
for a lot of people. But that's Nigerian News Direct this morning.
The Guardian newspaper is interested in the delay of the PIB. NAS delay of PIB stirs anger. That's what you have on the lead. Moving debate to 2021. Trouble stakeholders. Oh, you're shocked.
Yeah.
Well, maybe...
2021.
Yeah. Buhari faces fresh attack on petrol price hike. Citizens lament poverty, inflation, unemployment. Stakeholders decry poor resources utilization, and then asks president to increase minimum wage. Now, of course, you have heard it all. So which one are you primarily interested in?
Honestly, as a journalist, I've also studied the PIB. I discovered that there are a lot of vested interests in this bill, and I don't know what they actually want. But one particular interest that I see there is the unbundling of the NNPC. That is actually the interest of the central government. As long as NNPC is there, it will always be something that the president will want to romance. I think that is, I don't know, you know, petroleum sector is the mainstay of Nigeria's economy, and every president, they want to see what is happening there until we have somebody who is determined to say, okay, NNPC should be unbundled, and they buy into that bill. That bill is not likely to see the end of day, and it's quite, every reform that this sector needs should be backed up by the government. But it's unfortunately in this part of the world, a lot of vested interest, and that is what is leading us to where we are. You know, all right. Government want to control the NNPC, and that is creating a lot of problem for the sector. And as long as that bill is not passed, we continue to witness this kind of problem in the sector. All
right, so there you go. Those are some of the dailies. Go ahead, make your pick of any one of them, but we do thank you for coming on this morning, Mr. Abimbola Toki, editor of Business World. We will be back in a moment. Stay with us.
I'm very concerned, in fact, sometimes angry about what I see happening, you know, to young men and women who are arrested, or in some cases maimed or killed, you know, by men of the police force, and, you know, in some cases, those who man tactical units of the police force, such as SARS and the other different tactical units that there are. It is completely objectionable. It's unacceptable. You know, these are individuals who are meant to protect Nigerians. For example, and I think in the statement it specifically said that you cannot have a situation where SARS say they're investigating cybercrime and arresting people, young men and women who are carrying laptops and carrying on their phones. You know, cybercrime is an electronic crime. There's no way that you can investigate that by seizing people's phones in a taxi or in their cars. So I think it's very obvious that this is a major concern. A few bad eggs within the police force are causing a lot of these, and because it's all over the place in different states, there's a need, of course, to take serious action. I think that the IG statement today is a good first step.
Ifeoma Abugu, allegedly illegally detained, tortured and killed by the police in Abuja in October 2020. Remo Stars Football Club player Tiyamu Kazim, also allegedly killed by officers of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad SARS in February 2020. Kolade Johnson, also killed by the police in 2019. And the list goes on. It's been a sordid tale of terror unleashed by the police. In the aftermath of the latest incident involving the police and a man who was hospitalized following an alleged attempt to evade arrest in Ueli, Delta State, the Inspector General of Police banned the SARS from routine patrol and released new guidelines for its operations. The House of Representatives is also wading in, vowing to act over allegations of extrajudicial killings and other vices by SARS.
The House therefore resolves further request the Inspector General of Police to produce a comprehensive record of disciplinary and or judicial action taken against the officers accused of abuse of power in the past 5 years.
In the Senate, a lawmaker raises a motion on the brutality of the Nigerian police, while some senators, including the Senate President, prefer solutions to this problem.
Senate is concerned that Nigerian youth can no longer move freely for fear that they will be profiled and accused of being Yahoo boys or fraudsters merely because they look good, own laptops, iPhones, nice-looking cars, or profiled by having dreads or certain hairstyles.
There are good elements in SARS, and they have been doing a very wonderful job. So if you scrap SARS, for example, you lose the chance of getting those that are doing well to continue to do well. But anybody in SARS or indeed in any arm of the security agencies that commits excesses should be prosecuted. The law should take its course, full course.
The Senate recommends that the police set up hotlines for Nigerians to report abuse and human rights violations by its officers. The National Assembly is mandated to oversight security agencies such as the police. But Nigerians are wondering why abuse and extrajudicial killings by the police have gone on for so long without the intervention of the National Assembly. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
All right, welcome back. Well, yes, we do have Honorable Ado Dogowa, Majority Leader of the House of Representatives. Well, we also do have Mr. John Aipopo Martin, who is the first Vice President of the NBA. But Honorable Dogowa is got a schedule today. So, pardon me, Honorable Mr. Martins, we'll start with Honorable Dogowa so that we can get his perspective before he gets off to the Assembly. So, good morning, and thank you for joining us again today. Now, we've seen the report by the...
Thank you.
All right, the Senate, the President of the Senate was given a perspective in terms of how to proceed with this. But the National Assembly also coming up with theirs, where we understand within 30 days there will be new legislation to see how they could check the activities of SARS. So tell us, what is the thinking of the National Assembly in this regard? The House of Reps, I beg your pardon, with this particular incident.
Thank you so much for having me on this very important platform this morning. As usual, like you all know, the National Assembly, whether the House of Representatives or the Senate, are constitutionally the representatives of the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And with that, that means we have to be concerned about the business of governance, business of security, welfare of the people of the country. Obviously, I want to believe everybody knows that the business of government, most fundamentally, is the business of security of lives and property of the people. And on that note, the House of Representatives in particular, and by extension even the Senate, are particularly concerned about incessant and flagrant abuse of powers, sometimes violations of fundamental human rights by this particular unit of the Nigerian Police Force called the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. SARS. On that note, therefore, the House, under the leadership of the Right Honorable Femi Bajabiamila, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, of course, riding on our fundamental agenda, legislative agenda, we feel there is cause for concern, and we must have to really call a stop to this, to what is actually happening in this particular unit, and even in other components of the Nigerian Police Force. An organization that you call a security organization must be quite conscious of the existing extant laws, rules, and regulations governing their operations. And what we see happening is a situation whereby the SARS, as a unit of the police force, is violating a lot of human rights entitlements of Nigerian citizens, subjecting themselves even beyond the context of their mandate. We look at them as if they are even derailing, departing, a very sharp departure from their core mandate as a security agency to fight against armed robbery, banditry, kidnappings, and other things, wading into other things. The intention, so to say, by the House of Representatives and the Senate as well, is for us to make sure that the applicability of the rule of law as a principle, has a universal applicability, and that our rules that are meant to be respected cannot be breached by anyone, not even the police organization or any other person. And it is in this regard that we feel we must have to come up with some new reforms, new legislative framework that will really subject some of these officers of the police, not even some of the officers of the police as a whole, including creating legal framework whereby individual policemen will be held accountable for their actions or inactions, conduct or misconduct as the case might be. Because if you go by the existing legislation we have in the Constitution, and of course in the recently reformed, in the recently accented Police Reform Act, that is like there is a provision which has more or less provided the police force and individuals or individual members serving under the police force, it has provided them something like an unfettered protection, unjustifiable protection, taking undue advantage of that section 215 subsection 5, where it has clearly stated that no one can make any inquiry at the court of law as regards the function and responsibilities of the policeman. If you look at this provision of the Constitution, actually, with respect and without any prejudice to the drafters of our Constitution, I think is to say the least that it was an oversight, and you cannot allow an oversight to continue to derive the process of our security operations in the country. The Speaker has made it very clear, and the House has also resolved that we will very soon commence a legislative process where steps must be taken to clearly define what a police officer can do in the course of investigations. And where he has run foul, there must be a clearly spelled out a penalty for him to bear his cross. But in a situation whereby individuals of the policemen are being protected by way of omission or commission by the law, the laws of the land, then certainly I think it's going to be so sad for our kind of development. We are operating a democratic system of government, and we must be seen to be respecting democratic tenets in virtually whatever we are doing. In the motion we have moved yesterday, it has been resolved. It has been resolved completely. It has been approved and resolved that we must have to charge the Inspector General of Police to within 3 weeks come up, wade into this kind of crisis, this kind of issues. He must have to take ambitious steps to stop these unfortunate happenings among the men of the SARS. We have also charged him to also report to the House within 3 weeks records of actions taken, whether judicial or administrative actions, in terms of penalizing of discipline, in terms of discipline those who are found one way or the other committing or abusing their powers as police officers. And subsequently, a joint House Committee of Police Affairs, Human Rights, and Legislative Compliance have been charged to jointly look at the matter and ensure that these things are stopped henceforth.
Now, some of the immediate thoughts when the information was that the House of Reps will come up with a new legislation. So one wonders, we just had the Police Act. Must this committee come up with a new legislation to check this? Because many thought this Police Act went through the National Assembly. So how come they didn't, if these provisions that they want to come up with were not in here, why was there that oversight? And some of the CPs we've spoken to actually thought it's not that there have to be new laws. There has to be implementation of some of these laws to address these challenges.
Yes, I think you can all agree with me. Laws, or a law in a land like Nigeria or in anywhere else, a law is like a living thing. So it's not surprising when a living thing it's not surprising when someone went to his doctor yesterday for an ailment and still goes back to the doctor tomorrow for another ailment. So we look at our laws as if they are living, and we'll look at them with that kind of dynamic approach, and we'll continue to address some of these ailments associated or that are inherent in our existing laws. Yes, we have recently passed the Police Reform Act, but we are all human. For one reason or the other, it has escaped maybe our legislative attention at the moment, at that moment. But now that it has come to our attention, that there are a lot of other things still to be cured, part of the in the context and the content of the Police Reform Act. And of course, it is our duty to continue to do these kind of things time in, time out. It doesn't mean that because we have had the Reform Act recently passed, we cannot look at it again. That is why every session, every term of a legislature, like the National Assembly, is given an opportunity to even look at the Constitution. Remember, the Police Reform Act is an act on a separate hand, while we have the supreme document governing the operations of our Nigerian democracy, which is called the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And of course, while we were reviewing the Police Act, we also have an opportunity through the Constitution Review Committee, which has been kick-started already. The committee has been inaugurated by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and is now the duties and responsibilities of this special committee to look at those content of the constitutions where there are ailments, where there are deficiencies that have provided for the police force what we all agreed to be an unjustifiable protection in the course of the discharge of their duties. A situation whereby an individual, no matter where he works or where he operates as an official of government, cannot bear liabilities of criminal or civil liabilities, then there is an issue. It is like that person is being above the law, and we cannot allow that situation to continue. The legislation we intend to embark upon will engage specialized groups, the NBA, specialized groups to do with the civil society organization, and will also open doors for wider consultations with high-level stakeholders of the Nigerian polity. Politicians, traditional rulers, even the policemen will be asked to come and join hands with us so that we can have a robust engagement, and at the end we come up with a piece of legislation that will really cure some of these deficiencies, some of these weaknesses, some of these unjustifiable advantage some of our people are taking to molest, sometimes to torture. Look at, for instance, we have even the anti-torture bill, an anti-torture act of 2017. It is being flagrantly undermined. It is not being respected. A situation whereby a policeman in the course of investigation will have to embark on torture, molestation, sometimes intimidation, or that leads to, sometimes it leads to even extrajudicial killings. This is quite unacceptable. And as a legislature, as far as the House is concerned, being the House of the Nigerian people, we cannot sit down and tolerate these things happening at the expense of the liberty of our people. That is just the intention, and we will go ahead to do that in the interest of the general public, general public.
Honorable, I don't know how far-reaching that assurance or reassurance will be for the people, because I mean, you are not unaware that within the past 4 years, this same unit has been banned 4 times, twice this year already. But despite all of that, they have a standard operational procedure, they have code of conduct, they have rules and regulations, they have a chain of command, and all these things have happened until then. And every time there is a ban, such pronouncements as you have, well, similar pronouncements have been made, reforms have been talked about, and many of them have been executed, and yet we have what we have. You also talked about the flagrant abuse of the Anti-Torture Act without anyone, being reprimanded significantly enough to ward off a recurrence. So what's the assurance we have that this new arrangement, this new law that the House of Representatives is proposing will make any difference?
I think, like you rightly said, some of the steps and actions taken were actions taken from other quarters of authority. It could be maybe from the police force themselves. It could be a presidential statement. It could be any other thing from any other quarter of authority. I want to give Nigerians our commitment, our institutional commitment that this time around is a parliamentary intervention. We are coming up with a robust law, a law that will be quite ambitious in terms of commitment to address this problem. And we want to make sure that at the end, what we now come up with by way of legislation must have to be enshrined in the supreme document of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which will certainly give us that impetus, that absolute protection, that absolute impossibility, so that at the end of the day, we don't have a recurrence of what had happened in the past. A situation whereby we now sit down and see killings happening left, right, and center. My brother, this time is going to be a giant stride.
Well, Honorable, just one moment.
It is already encapsulated in our agenda.
Yeah, we hear you, but
and it will certainly be a different.
Yes, just one moment. just one moment. Earlier, you talked about the human intervention, the human angle to all of this. We are all human beings.
Yes.
And these laws need to be enforced one way or another. One of the things that the House of Representatives talked about is that the police can no longer police itself. So what's the assurance we have that the human beings that are going to champion this new law that is being proposed will do the needful and not compromise as usual?
I think with due respect to our intentions to involve specialized people, the Nigerian Bar Association, the civil society organizations that will join hands with us to come up with this piece of legislation, I think I don't want to even preempt what the content of the laws will be. But I'm giving Nigerians and your humble self that the Nigeria's House of Representatives, being so much concerned about this unfortunate development, this time around will give this legislation a complete lease of life. We'll give it a complete new impetus to make it work, quite different from what was happening in the past. And I want to also assure you that the context of the law will go to the extent that even if it means giving a clear-cut statement, scrapping some of those agencies flagrantly violating human rights, creating also punitive measures stated clearly in the constitutional provisions of our country, where penalties can now be meted on whoever goes wrong in the discharge of his own lawful duties, then certainly we will do that, so that at the end we will now be seen to be making laws that are functional, making laws that are productive, making laws that are enforceable.
Now, speaking of making these laws, just speaking of making those laws, I mean, you say the House of Reps specifically has 4 weeks to come up with a legislation to curb the excesses and the impunity displayed by some men of SARS. So you have 4 weeks. And then you also mentioned Section 215 sub 5 of the Constitution, and you say that that is a part that you like to tweak so that, you know, the policemen can be accountable for their actions and superiors. You know that this will involve an amendment of the Constitution, and I'm wondering, can you achieve that in 4 weeks also? Because amending the Constitution, in fact, just to change the name of the Nigeria Police Force to Nigeria Police, that couldn't happen because it is recognized as the Nigeria Police Force in the Constitution. So the question is, can you achieve a constitutional amendment in 4 weeks?
No, get us right. We the Speaker never said in 4 weeks that we will conclude this legislation. But the Speaker gave a commitment that in 30 days coming, in the next 4 weeks, we will commence engagement of stakeholders to come up with this legislation. Even the committee that was now mandated to go ahead and investigate some of these things was given 6 weeks to report back to the House. And naturally, you wouldn't expect us to finish a legislation to this magnitude, a legislation of this high-level sensitivity within 4 weeks. So get us right, Nigerians should also get the Speaker right and the House right, that we only said we will initiate this legislative engagement with specialized group of people, the Nigerian Bar Association, the civil society organization. Within 30 days, we will commence this one in 4 weeks' time. But obviously, we cannot finish this thing in 4 weeks. We need a lot of time to do that. After all, even the Constitutional Review Committee, which has also that constitutional mandate and responsibility to even liaise with the 36 state houses of assembly, obviously is not a job for 4 weeks. But we'll give it all the commitments, all the commitment it deserves. We'll give it all the attention it deserves.
So clearly these reforms that
kind of
right. So clearly these reforms that you talk about,
legislation will require, will certainly give that attention.
Right. So these reforms might not come into play until the constitutional amendment comes to fruition. But also, you said that the IGP should appear before the House of Reps in 3 weeks, and you want to see some concrete measures taken. But don't forget that the IGP announced measures being taken. Aside the banning, he talked about monitoring, arrest, and prosecution of policemen that have, you know, flagrantly abused human rights provisions and what have you. Are you saying those announcements by the IGP, they're not enough?
No, sorry, get me right once again. Get the House right once again. We never said the IGP should appear before the House. We are aware of some of those pronouncements he has made. We are also aware of some of the steps he's taken internally to check these excesses. But what we said is that the IGP should make available, whether in writing, communication, soft or hard copy, to communicate to the committee, this committee we have set, actions he has taken, steps he has taken to really stop these unfortunate happenings in the police force. We have never decided to invite him to come and talk to us, either in the chamber of the House or to the committee. But we have directed him to make available a comprehensive report as to what he has done so far to check some of these expenses. If there are records of judicial actions taken, the House would like to have that.
Pardon us for jumping in, because we know you need to run, so that's why we're trying to put in as much as we can before you go.
No problem. I still have time. There is no rush.
Oh, fantastic then. All right, that's good to know. Ahead. All right, so now, much as it's good to ensure that these things are addressed, but we seem to gloss over or not pay enough attention to one thing: the welfare of these policemen. If you look at the barracks, where they stay, how much do they earn, it's appalling. For instance, retired DIGs were told earn 100,000 naira. How could we give them guns and not look at their welfare?
I think you may be getting this thing wrongly as well. My brother, let me tell you, the kind of concern we have for the Nigerian police, and virtually every security organization in the country, is one that you can never imagine. I do not want to delve into discussions of these kind of things on a television like that, but I want to tell you without any fear of contradiction that the kind of funding we give to the Nigeria police, the kind of funding we give to the extended security agencies in Nigeria for them to secure our people, which of course is a right, is something that you can never imagine. We have never taken that lightly. How they go about implementing or managing the resources accorded them, then that is their own business, and I think it's a question that they need to come and answer. But I want to tell you, the House of Representatives, and by extension the National Assembly, had always taken above board any considerations of provision of funds. We resource them all the time. We give them what they require. In fact, we have given standing and marching orders to relevant committees of security agencies that when their budget are presented, whether in the normal conventional appropriation act or in any amendment submitted or supplementary budget provided by the presented by the executive arm of government, no relevant committee of the institution of the legislature goes near cutting or undermining what they require for security, because we have the belief and the commitment that there is no amount of resources that can be too much for security. We have always done that. Whether they are paid this amount or that amount, I think it's for the police to come and defy and really confirm that. But I want to believe, so I want to contend with you that the payments in terms of their welfare, provisions in terms of their housing, retirement benefits, provisions of resources for them to acquire facilities and weapons to defend the country and also protect lives and property of the people, I think is quite commendable on the part of the legislature, and we'll continue to keep that.
We'll come back to this in just a moment. So good to know that you still have some time, so please join us again in a moment. Welcome back to Sunrise Day. Well, let's get to Mr. Aikbopo Martins. He's the first vice president of the NBA. Well, thank you for hanging on. Well, now, yes, indeed, the House says they will get across to CSOs, the NBA, where you are, and that they will put heads together. What are your immediate thoughts about how to address this problem beyond the pronouncements that we've seen, which clearly have not addressed the issues?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chamberlain. I also want to, first of all, I want to commend the National Assembly for extending a hand of fellowship to the NBA and other civil society organizations. Because I think the step they are taking, from the very first step they have taken now, they got it right seriously. Because lawyers, we are the persons who all the time we interact with the society and other persons whose rights have been infringed upon. And we have a lot to say, and we have a lot of knowledge, residual knowledge about this whole matter. Also, the issue of, in fact, what the National Assembly is trying to do now is they're trying to find a scheme for policing the police themselves. Because police seems to have the overriding power to do all they can, and nobody sort of supervises them. They only supervise themselves, and most often than not, they don't do anything with respect to complaints coming from the public against men of the Nigerian police. What they usually do is cosmetic. Maybe you have about 50 complaints, they treat about only 3, and they think that is enough. But I think they have become a burden in their atrocities, and it's the Nigerian people are not crying out, and it's high time that something must be done. So I want to commend the National Assembly for taking up this matter. Because in Nigeria, I used to say that Nigeria, there's so much innocent blood crying for justice in Nigeria. So many persons just being killed and no repercussion, no deterrence, no punishment for any person. So we are very, very glad that once and for all they are taking steps by way of legislation. But the question you asked was, what are my immediate thoughts? Yeah, well, I would say personally that I've always had this belief that we should have a special unit that can intervene when issues of police inhumanity to man is happening or has been reported. For example, there is this in the federal road safety, they have special marshal. However, the special marshal complements the police, but we need to have special marshal that their duty is not to complement the police, but to watch over the police. Such marshals should be drawn from very men of integrity in the society. So that, for example, I'm living in an environment and I hear of such things and brought to my knowledge. I should have the part. There should be legislation that gives such persons who have been specially appointed by law to go and intervene and have the power to call the DPO or the persons who are involved to order instantly and report to another body, particularly the National Human Rights Committee. We have a National Human Rights Committee. People don't even know their duties, but their duties by law is to monitor and investigate all human rights violation in Nigeria and report to the federal government or state government as the case may be, and also for those who are to be prosecuted, report to the attorney generals for prosecution. Now, so that body, the National Human Rights Commission can be used as a body that can actually at every given time intervene and supervise the police. Apart from these special marshals, like I'm saying, I'm using the word special marshal, but what I'm trying to say that the legislation the National Assembly is considering now, there should be provision where some men of integrity in society, I should expect that chairman of branches of Nigerian Bar Association, chairman of the Nigerian Medical Association in their locality, chairman of maybe the surveyors, these are men who ordinarily are already men of integrity in society. If they are appointed maybe for a position of 3 years to supervise the police in their actions with respect to human rights violation, then I think we'll be making a headway. Nigeria is a very peculiar country, so we need to think out of the box to nip in the bud some of the things that happen in Nigeria. You see, when you see these SARS officials, when you see them misbehaving, so now you really wonder whether they have milk of human kindness in them. The atrocities are just outrageous. It's befitting to us how human beings can just go to the extent to which they go. They brutalize, they shoot, they kill without thinking. And the next question again is this: how do they recruit these men of the SARS? Because I think the problem we are having is that they just recruit policemen, bring them constitute them into a special unit that ought to have been a specialized unit. We don't have any college where they are trained. They don't have any special training, but you just put them, and the next thing you arm them, and they are in the streets, and they just become a law unto themselves. I think let me commend the National Assembly for bringing up the
you have raised some
ready to cooperate with them. Yesterday,
right.
When
So some of the
in the news,
we're going to take this back to Honorable Dogowa. Some of the issues that you raised are part of what needs to be addressed. For instance, Honorable Dogowa, they're already bombarding us with the salary bit. Some of them say, look, that they don't quite agree with that position. They wonder if the House is monitoring and ensuring that that accountability structure is being adhered to. They, in this CSP with over a decade experience, earns about 200,000 naira. And in fact, some of them even say, look, the question of training that he spoke about, but the recruitment question, a CP joined us the other time and he said, look, politicians have a huge chunk of the blame. That number one is that the quality of the commissioners of police in different places are far below par. It's based on who you know. They post people who are less qualified to man those positions, and as such, they are overwhelmed with some of those activities. We don't put the right people in those places. What are we going to do about that clause, for instance?
Are you with me?
Honorable Dogowa, yes, that's for you.
Yes, I think, like I've said, some of these issues are not only classified, but they are very sensitive things that certainly I may not be able to address them openly here. But the fact remains that I challenge any police officer from head to toe to come and tell me that their problems is funding. I believe we can do more for them. But I don't want to accept the fact that there's any problem in terms of provision of funds or resources for them to train their people, for them to do the right thing, for them to operate according to global standard professional expectations as far as the policing of Nigerian people is concerned. And I want to believe we have relevant committees who do engage them time in, time out, supervise them by way of oversight. And I believe some of those things are being addressed one way or the other. Even at the level of the leadership, when we have issues, or they have issues, we have always made our doors open, wide open, for them to come and interact with us, interface with us. And in doing that, we have we don't renege in whatever guise to undermine their welfare, to undermine provision of resources that will fund their activities, campaign and operations. So as far as funding is concerned, Chamberlain, I want to believe that it cannot be the problem of politicians. I challenge any police officer to tell me that their major problem now is funding. There could be need for more, which of course we are committed to providing more, but not as if they are being grossly underfunded.
Okay. Well, let me ask Mr. Ipopo Martins this one. Well, you have heard that, and you probably are aware as well that the number of people, perhaps even policemen, who may not want to show their faces, would raise issues around funding for them. For which reason some have even alluded to the fact that the reason some of the policemen go to the streets extorting money is because they have orders of maybe a DPO or a CP to do that. Do you think it's a problem of funding or legislation or the people themselves who are activating these things? Which one do you think is the real issue here?
The real issue is lack of passion. They are bitter. Part? Most policemen are bitter. Many of them are not supposed to be policemen.
Why are they bitter?
Let me explain to you. They are not the only. They are not the only Nigerians who are paid the same salary. From my understanding, the salary structure of Nigeria is the same. Whether you are in the police, you are in the custom, you are in the federal service, they have the same salary structure. Every person is suffering from what is going on. The policemen, I think most of them lack passion. They never even wanted to be policemen, but because there was no other job, they now became police officers. Once you have passion for a job, it's very difficult for you to abuse the tenets of that profession. So what you have is, like I said, you have persons who never wanted to be policemen, then they now have the opportunity of carrying guns, and they now believe that they can use that opportunity to extort other Nigerians. The issue of funding, it is everywhere. Nobody is well paid in this country. That is the truth of the matter. Many people cannot even take, their salary cannot take them home. However, that does not mean that they will everybody will have to turn to armed robbers. So that issue is not good enough at all. They shouldn't be able to bring it up at all. That is the truth of the matter. Whether they are being funded, we all know that police is not the welfare is not really that good. But that should not be an excuse for brutalizing other persons. They don't brutalize the rich men. It's the poor people themselves that are brutalizing. Why? Because they have the opportunity to carry guns.
Just one moment.
I don't agree with that thought. That
sometimes
because they were not properly funded.
You know, you have also heard it said a number of times. You have also heard it said a number of times that when people go to police stations, they are asked to, the policemen would ask them to pay maybe for fuel or for one thing or the other before they can follow them to go and take on some of these issues. It's not a funding problem. Then what is it? No. You see, the question, the issue at stake now is the atrocities they commit, their inhumanity to other citizens. That has nothing to do with funding. If you say that if somebody comes to the police station, you want money for generator and all that, that's what the complaint of Nigerians as we are speaking now. The complaint of Nigerians is that SARS and other police units
against the rule of law, they abuse the rights of other Nigerians. They kill Nigerians. Many people have been killed. In fact, for any person that has a child of between the age of 17 to 30, you must be very scared when your son is leaving the home. Because once they see any young man on the street, you are likely to be picked. And if you are not from a very rich family or influential family, you might not return. If you go to the police station, you see what goes on. Go to the prison. Many innocent persons are in the prison. They will frame you up. That is the truth of the matter. So that is what Nigerians are complaining about. Not whether or not, if I go to a police station, they will ask me for money to buy fuel or not. If that is the issue, well, Nigerians can live with that. Nigerians can almost live with anything. But this issue has become overbearing that Nigerians are now crying out. And that's why the National Assembly, for the first time, that taking such a drastic action that when I heard the National Assembly, Speaker giving that order yesterday, I cannot remember the last time the National Assembly is trying to take such drastic action in such a very fast time. It is because they are hearing the cries of Nigerians. People are dying. And most of the people who are dying are people who are on the lower rung of the society. So it has nothing to do with funding at all. It has to do with attitude. It has to do with character and disposition. And like I said before, most of them are very bitter because we relate with them all the time. They are very bitter. They are not bitter because they are not well paid. They are bitter for many other reasons. Many of them have their ambition truncated. Many of them don't like doing the work of the police. Sometimes you meet other policemen who, when you meet, you'll be very shocked that this man is actually a policeman because he loves his job. And because he loves his job, he put passion into it. And these inadequacies are not enough to turn him into a wicked or a dangerous man. But for those who are bitter, any small thing, they are angry and they tend to shoot and they tend to kill without thinking. So those are the issues we are quarreling about as for today. Not the funding cannot be the reason. I think the police should go back. How they recruit those men into SARS must be looked at. There must be some basics to look at the psychological being and the psychological makeup of every individual before being handed a gun to go into the street. Must be taken into account. And I think at this
hear you, but
a lot of reform need to take place in the police force.
Let's bring in Honorable Dogowa again on this one. What is going to happen to the Police Service Commission? They are in charge of the disciplinary role of the police because yesterday they even issued a statement about what they're doing or will do to discipline erring officials. What is he thinking about that?
The thinking, Chamberlain, like I've earlier said, is going to be a holistic one. Our intention is to come up with a robust and comprehensive reform of all pieces of legislation to do with police administration. Where we find the Police Service Commission wanting, or where we find the Police Service Commission being protected unnecessarily by a provision of the law, we will look at that law and change it, repeal it, to make the Police Service Commission work under the expectation of a civil society. Where we find the IG, maybe by powers enshrined or given to him by the Constitution, or where we find a DPO, even a prosecutor at the court level, where we find he's been overprotected to operate as a civil person, to operate within the context of the global standard. The House is now committed to make a comprehensive repeal of those existing laws so that we can also have what we can call a democratic policy. We will provide provisions in the Constitution and any other piece of legislation around the institution of the police. An intervention where we will have something that will police the police. But what we have at the moment is that the police are policing themselves. The police are above the law. The police are becoming so criminal in the fight against criminality. And that is the intention. So the fact is that as long as we give this comprehensive intervention to the pieces of laws around the police administration, we will get every other thing right. The point raised by my colleague here to do with the attitudinal disposition of police officers is also germane. I used to be a sociology student, and I know what is called job satisfaction. When you are undertaking a job, Chamberlain, you as moderator there, a newscaster or an editor on the television, if you are not satisfied with a job, then certainly what you do will not be effective. And we will take note of all these things in the next legislation that we are going to encapsulate, so that at the end we have a beautiful and wonderful policing in our own country, Nigeria, given our nationhood and given our democratic journey to nationhood. I think we should be beyond this at the moment. We shouldn't be talking of extrajudicial killings at the moment. At the level of our democratic development, we shouldn't be talking of torture. We shouldn't be talking of bribery and whatever. Go and ask the police officers, as far as their welfare is concerned, ask them how much is a constable earning now as his salary. It's quite different from what you used to know. How much, even uniform, police uniform, that in the budget, we provide for their uniforms, 2 sets of uniform each. I know of this in the past 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not sure whether that has been done in the current budget, but most things to do with the welfare and well-being of the police officers has always been taken care of very seriously.
Right. And now, Honorable, Mr. Ikpopo Martins talked about passion. You talk about job satisfaction. And I'm thinking, in the process of writing a new legislation, how would you write passion, job satisfaction into a legislation? Because according to Mr. Ikpopo Martins, a good number of them are not happy with the job. So are you going to write it or say, you know what, if you're not happy or satisfied, maybe you should go, let's get in new people. So how will the legislation really capture that whole passion, job satisfaction component?
I believe what will come, when we come to legislate, when we come to reform some of these existing laws, like I said, we will engage so many people, specialized people. Psychologists will be on board. Sociologists will be on board. Teachers will also come on board. Retired police officers will come on board. I believe with all these hands on deck, we will be able to address some of these deficiencies in terms of even recruitment of the police officers up initio. A situation whereby somebody just comes around to be a police officer simply because he could not get any other job elsewhere. That is something that should be looked at. You must only come to be a police officer on first-line charge when you have the commitment and the devotion that, yes, this is my first choice of service to serve my fatherland, Nigeria. When you are coming to be a policeman on a second chance or on a second thought, oh no, I wanted to be a banker, I wanted to be a lawyer, I wanted to be maybe in the Nigerian army, simply because you could not get that opportunity, you now turn coming to the police as a second opportunity. That should not be tolerated. So wait, specialized people under this kind of context will come and have their experience to bear.
At the end of the day, do we expect there to be some, flushing out, mass flushing out of bad eggs in the police force, or what? What should we expect?
Chamberlain, expect everything.
Oh.
Expect everything, every other thing that will make our police and policing a perfect one. We will do whatever it takes to make sure that our own police administration is to the best standard of world practice. Fine. Anything short of that, the law will not tolerate that. And this time around, we are going to give this law like a final intervention, final engagement, so that Nigerian police can now be an institution that could be emulated world over.
Right. So if we were to expect
whatever you expect to make our own police administration will be done.
Okay. Well, you have said it. Expect everything. Some will add anything. But Mr. Ikpopo Martins, right. You know, I mean, this is a whole lawmaking process. I mean, the House of Reps says they'll come up with something in 30 days in collaboration with the NBA, CSOs, and the rest, just to have something that will solve these issues. But I referred to the constitutional provision in Section 205, sub 5, which is a major part, or which will form a major part of this legislation. Do you see any hiccups ahead, any form of potholes? Because that will involve constitutional amendment, and you know that is usually quite difficult to achieve.
Yes, if I got Mr. Dongowa very clearly, he said that, thank God, the process of the review of the Constitution is ongoing. So whatever they are going to do now, they are going to incorporate into the Constitution. That does not necessarily mean that it must only be incorporated into the Constitution before these laws can work. That's not what he said. But that these laws cannot be incorporated into the Constitution because the Constitution is being amended now, so that it will become difficult for those laws to be amended thereafter. I think that is the point he was trying to make. And if you look at the third schedule of the Constitution, where the police council is, the police council is giving power for the general supervision and administration of the police beyond the operation. So that means that the law itself envisaged, that the Constitution envisaged a situation where the police should be supervised. That's why it gave power to the police council to have power to supervise the police. So those are the areas that at the end of the day we are going to look at. The House of Assembly, the National Assembly is going to look at to ensure that the police can be supervised. So it is not impossible to supervise the police. The Constitution has already made provision for it in a general way. But what I understand the National Assembly is trying to do now is that whatever they do, they now input into the Constitution to make it a stronger legislation. Then secondly, I used to think that police used to have rules of engagement. That's why they used to have what you call the room trial. That is to say you have breached these rules. So they actually think that there are rules that can be enforced. The problem here is that the policemen, they are not enforcing the rules. In the army, we have what we call military police. In the military, we have what we call military police. We all know that no soldier that is not afraid of the military police, because immediately you misbehave, the military police, they come after you and they take you to court martial. But the police, what are they doing in their own, on their own side? They are not doing anything.
Okay, specifically
in 2012, when I was the vice. Yes.
Just a moment, pardon me. Whoa. Specifically, the House said, yes, that section 215 sub 5, they're looking to expunge it from the Constitution because it sort of, indemnifies the police from individual responsibilities from action taken. But the point I was trying to make is the fact that the clamor is end SARS now. Well, it appears as though SARS will not be ended, but reformed. But the point is, people are looking forward to it happening as soon as possible. So in terms of time frame, I mean, if that will be expunged from the Constitution, that might take some time. So what is the shortest, possible time that will see these reforms come into full-fledged?
Yes, that solution lies with the IGP. Because he has already given order. Because what we're asking for is operational orders. SARS is just a name. They can change the name and give it another name, and you still have the same outfit in town. So what Nigerians are saying is the atrocities they commit. The IGP have said, look, don't go out, you have no right to stop and search. You have no right to search the phones. You have no right to search bags. If all these are complied with, we won't have the issues we are having right now with unlawful killings. So the IGP has all the powers to ensure that his men are operating under the rule of law. So for the immediate task before us now, we are calling on the IGP to do the needful. Then the Police Service Commission, which has the power to discipline officers, should be up and doing. The question you ask yourself, go and check. Let's have the statistics. How many petitions have been written to Police Service Commission in the past 5 years, and how many did they treat? You'll be very shocked that the percentage will not be up to 10%. So the Police Service Commission themselves is not doing anything to discipline members of the force. The power given to the constitutionally to discipline members of the force. They are not doing that. The IGP has no power to discipline. He has powers to set the rules. But when these rules are breached, it is the Police Service Commission that ought to discipline. Have they been disciplining police officers? The answer is no. They arrest, after some time, they post the person to another place, and before you know it, they come back again to the station where they committed those atrocities. We see them every day. I live in Warri. There's a particular police station I don't want to mention. The atrocity happening in that police station. The police will propose that in less than 6 months, the same men are back and they are doing what they are doing. And they tell you that nothing will happen to us. And actually, you see nothing happening to them. What is the Police Service Commission doing? Those are the questions we should be asking. So the immediate ask now is to tax the Police Service Commission to ensure that the complaints of Nigerians are addressed. They should discipline police officers, and we want to know how many they have disciplined in recent times. We really want to know. You'll be shocked. Right. They are not disciplining any other person. So the ball, as of today, lies with the Police Service Commission and the Inspector General of Police.
Okay, Honorable, let's have you respond finally. Now, much as yes, it will be good to address the concerns that Nigerians have raised, but if we hear such complaints with the customs or Nigerian army, should we expect the same approach from the House?
Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. The answer is yes, and I repeat, is yes. It is because, like I said, virtually every component of governance is under the watch of the legislature as an institution. Governance is always for the people and by the people. And as long as every component of government service is done for the benefit of the people, then it's the business of the legislature. I want to assure you that if the custom goes foul, or the custom goes wrong one way or the other, we will also take the same action. If the military for any reason goes in the same wrong way, we will take same action. Like I've earlier said, we are going to come up with a comprehensive legislation that will address all these kind of deficiencies in terms of administration of security administration as per the security agencies in the country. No matter who is affected. It's not about the police alone. It's going to be comprehensive. It's going to be standard. It's going to be globally addressed. It will be addressed in accordance with global best practices.
Okay, many are asking,
so no one will be spared.
Some are asking, will key officials of the police also be invited either openly or behind the scenes to also give the House their impression? Will members of the police force, will they be invited to also give their concerns?
Come again, please. I've not heard you well.
Will members of the Nigerian police equally be invited to talk about this as well, to give their impression?
Absolutely, absolutely. When you have a legislation before you as a legislature, when it comes to the level of engagement with the members of the public, the police or any other relevant agency that will have something to bring to bear in the course of our legislative considerations will openly be given the opportunity to come and share their thought with us.
All right.
But the most important thing is that we will never compromise our thought that is going to be geared or be guided by the best interest of the Nigerian people. The police will be invited, retired police officers, retired IGs will be invited, people who are specialized in terms of security, security works or security intelligence and what have you will also be invited. But the fact remains that we will be guided by the best interest of the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who must be protected, because the business of governance is about the protection of lives and property of the people. And when we must do that within the context of democratic operations, where everybody lives in a society where liberty thrives, nobody should be above the law. The rule of law has to be universally applied. That is the context.
We'll look forward to that, and we do thank you for your time, Honorable Ado Dogowa, Majority Leader in the House of Representatives. And then Mr. John Aikpokwo Martins, First Vice President of the NBA. Thank you as well for your perspectives this morning.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure being with you.
All right, so I'd like to remind the viewers, the officials, LASEMA, all the fire service officials, the ones on ground at that Barua area in Ikbaja, they are asking for help. No, not help to put out the fire, but they want all of those who are gathered there to just move back. This is a headache that they say they experience time and again with citizens, residents, wherever an incident occurs, everybody just crowds in there. It is dangerous. They want everyone as much as you can. Just keep your distance from those areas because you could be exposing yourself, putting yourselves in harm's way. It's already an incident. Look at how dangerous that scenario is. Those kind of actions, yes, we know they want to be first-line responders and help, but you need to also consider your own safety. Now they are asking, stay away so that you don't make the job a lot more difficult because, look, it's a combustible environment. Anything can happen. So you need to be a lot more careful. Stay away. And don't think that if you're driving a car, you could quickly just make a dash and go through some of those areas. I see vehicles do that. You need to be cautious. Utmost caution is advised.
The environment itself being combustible, I think that is a fact that is lost on many people. We've had fires in this particular, gas explosions in this particular environment over and over again. That speaks to the combustibility of the entire environment.
All right then, we're back in a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. Yes, turning our attention, as you saw there, with teachers. Look, of course, you know that there's so many perspectives about teaching, teachers, the processes. But we've got, as you've seen there, Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, who is the Executive Director of Development Specs Academy. Good morning, and thank you for joining us again today. Well,
good morning, Chamberlain. Glad to be here.
On the occasion of the World Teachers' Day, the President did announce some quite interesting policies, raising the service year from 35 to 40. Colleges of education, they'll have some boost, and those who leave their policy of employing them thereafter. Quite interesting. But the perspective of some states now say, whoa, wait a minute here. We can't implement some of these things as lofty as they sound because, look, already they say they are grappling with what, minimum wage. You remember the same states got bailouts from government, which I understand they had to pay back anyway. So with all those policies and the reactions coming through, where do you see all of this headed?
First of all, it is a very good decision the federal government has made to improve the welfare of teachers and education generally. So we start from the fact that it's a commendable step. To even have had a thought that this was necessary is good. If you look at the story of Finland, Finland was just like any other bloody country years back, depended mainly on agriculture. Then the leaders decided that, look, the only way we can secure our nation is to improve the quality of human capital. Today, Finland is #1 in education, #1 in science, #1 in, what do you call it? Yeah, #1 in science and mathematics. Now, in science, the US is 17, number 17 on the list in science, and 21 on mathematics. What is the magic of Finland? Finland, improve the welfare of teachers, improve the entry point for teachers. So for teachers in Finland, each classroom has 3 teachers. And the 3rd teacher is dedicated solely to people who have learning challenges. So it is a good thing, both from the angle of the need to develop human capital and all. But of course, you've hinted at the challenges. The challenges are real. My issue with the perspective on some of the challenges is that people are complaining about funding because of their own prioritization. Every state governor has his security vote. What does he do with it? As headers are running over their state. I mean, you saw the controversy, I think, between a governor in the Southwest. His deputy was complaining that he gets $750 a month. So the matter of funding need not become the issue at the moment. If we rearrange the entitlements of those in public office, it will be different. Ask yourself, for instance, Chamberlain, what are the lawmakers in the states making? What are the lawmakers at the federal level making? Can it be reviewed downwards? Yes. Can it come down to as low as 50 or 30% of what it is now? Yes. If you do that, you've got the money. If you also, so there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that.
Speaking about
observation is to say that, yeah, this decision of the government is good. Implementation will become an issue. But I'm sure you'll get to that.
And what we see in this country time and again, following up on your perspectives about the state legislators in terms of what they earn, we see the passion, with which they vie for some of these political officers, as our colleagues always remind us, to serve the people. That's what they're supposed to do. But with that passion, the fight, they could give anything to enter into any political office. Now, with these measures that the government has announced, assuming that the states will implement them, how do we get to that level where people will equally be passionate to become teachers?
First, the passion with which people vie for political office is not in order to serve the people. Your experience and my experience confirms that. They are passionate about getting into what has become the most lucrative means of livelihood in Nigeria today. So that's on one side. Now, the passion to become teachers. Chamberlain, I was, and I'm still a teacher. I've taught in a secondary school there in Lagos. I was a lecturer in Unilag for 8 years. Even now, Development Space Academy is about teaching. The human being is the primary resource of a nation. And when you have the leadership class that is not aware of this, they will do all sorts of things and think it is development. It is not. That's why you'll find that a state governor will spend a couple of billions building new classrooms, buying chairs, and he'll come on TV to announce investment in education. Go and ask him, how much are your teachers paid? When last did any of them go for any training? Do you get it? So that the very concept of education is lost on the people. We are spending so much on national security because there's no investment in citizenship education. The National Orientation Agency is not properly funded. When you have young people who are idle, when you have young people who can survive outside of the state, you cannot ask them to be patriotic because they won't know what you're talking about. So investment in education actually, why would you not want the passion remains for some people. For some of us, yes, human capital development remains a passion. But you see, just like in your previous program, I think one of your speakers was talking about people joining the police. Many people are teachers today, and you're talking about the majority because they couldn't find any other jobs. When I was teaching in Unilag, yes, I was teaching in the Department of Philosophy, and you had a lot of students who, when you come for programs, the way they greet themselves is great minds, and that's what you find in most of such departments in other universities when you go for conferences. So on one occasion, we are the great minds, we are the thinkers in the faculty. I say, hey, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, listen, no, you are not thinkers of anything. Most of you here came into philosophy because you couldn't get admission into law, into so many other departments. So try to make the best of this. Stop deceiving yourself. You're looking down on people or pretending to look down on people who are not in philosophy department, whereas you're there just because you had no choice and you're planning. Why there you're still writing jam? What am I leading up to? When the bulk of your teachers are people who are teaching because they are frustrated economically, you cannot get value. When Finland is the quality of capital, the best out of all schools are teachers in their country. That's why they are the way they are today. So we're not making the same kind of investment, and we're not getting the result. You also ask yourself about the regulatory agencies. At the nursery level, who are the teachers? Who measures them? Most of nursery teachers are either house helps or school dropouts, asked to take care of the children by the owners of the place. At the primary level, what is it like? 4 years ago, thereabouts, when El-Rufai tried to intervene on the matter, what did he get? The teachers carried placard. In fact, one of the placards said, examination is not the true test of knowledge, by teachers, because they failed a test El-Rufai gave them in Kaduna State. So passion about teaching cannot be preached.
Right.
A teacher is called to teach, and when he speaks, it's easy to listen to him, to follow him, to understand him. And that's why you find that those who really have a passion for teaching, they are not driven by economics. But even though the Bible says man shall not live by bread alone, I haven't seen a verse in the Bible that says man should do without bread while on earth. Right. That's why I think that part of the measure the government is taking today, or is proposing, will help address some of these things. But we must also touch on the logistical challenges of it. Making an announcement is not enough. The government, for instance, the new proposal is not captured in the 2021 budget. There's no logic to how the money will come, but I'm trying to provide part of that logic by saying, let us recalibrate.
Right. We'll talk about the implementation.
At where we are spending that we shouldn't spend.
Right. We'll look at some of the implementation in a moment. Sorry? I mean, you've talked about the 2021 appropriation bill. Maybe this is not captured, but we'll talk about that implementation in a moment. But just to bring this, closer home, I mean, we've seen what is happening with the End SARS campaign, and some say it's because some of these officers lack job satisfaction, they lack the passion. That's why we see some of these human rights abuses. That's something we clearly see. But for teachers, I mean, you talked about some teachers not having that passion or job satisfaction. What is it costing us? Yes, we see what happens when police officers are bitter, lack passion. We see that clearly. But for teachers, it appears as though we don't see it as much, but clearly there is a cost. So what is that costing us?
What is costing us is poor quality human capital, and you're bringing up a lot of young people who have no respect for teachers. Partly because of the pay of teachers, partly also because of the desperate steps teachers take in order to survive, partly also because they see the teachers genuflecting before their parents in order to get 1,500, 2,000 occasionally. So you then find that there's a reversal of values. Teachers are supposed to determine the quality of human capital, to educate you on citizenship, to give you a sense of self-worth, so that every teacher actually has the potential capacity to determine the moral tone of a nation. Now you have people who are unqualified for the job, who are not interested in the job, who are very frustrated, and that becomes, instead of the first contact with a young person out of home with value creators, that would be their first contact with value destroyers. Their lesson notes will not be complete. They may not mark the scripts. All kinds of funny things begin to happen, and that's why the university system has collapsed completely. What is it costing us? Move it out of the primary and secondary, move to the university. In the last 25, 30 years, universities are not able to retain their best graduating students because better paying sectors of the economy have drawn them away. They're also not able to retain even the second and first and the third best. And so you find that in many places, if not in most places, and I dare say in most places, third-rate academic material are producing fifth-rate graduates, and that's why we are where we are today. Yes, like I said, I was teaching in the university. Yes, I was the best graduating student. Yes, the offer from the bank didn't make sense, because if you have to leave me working in a bank, I think I'll join my ancestors in less than 3 months, dealing with papers instead of people I want to see the passion in their eyes, people who will take me on issues. Now, what you then have is that at all levels of the Nigerian educational system, you have a dysfunctional human capital development factory, where the raw materials from the nursery and primary and secondary level are, first of all, not even good for admission at the tertiary level, and where the factory workers at all those levels are also not as qualified as they should be. And so you find the kind of graduates we have. You find also that citizenship has disappeared because everybody is trying to make money. So whatever position you get, you cancel the actual job description of that office, and right under it, means of survival. That's why the policeman is on the road. That's why teachers are talking about handouts. That's why I find that lecturers struggle to build houses near the university so they can rent it out, and so many other things. So it is costing us a lot, particularly at the level of national security. Security does not exist because people are carrying guns. No. It exists because there's a general rejection of misconduct. And how does that express itself if there's good citizen education? It shows itself in the fact that any stranger who comes into the neighborhood is reported. Any act of misconduct in a village, the traditional ruler sees it as his business. But if he's scandalized, how can this happen in my domain? It's not happening today. Okay. My brother, those are the costs.
All right.
Where the concept of citizenship has evaporated because the structures for building citizens no longer function to do so.
On that same
That's why lawmakers will tell you the number of laws they make.
Just one moment, Dr.
How they are passionate about Nigeria. And
forgive me. Just one moment, forgive me. You have talked about
That's all right.
Our costs until now. Let's push it a little forward.
So I didn't get that.
You have talked about the consequences of our actions until now. Now,
yes,
I would like you to, look forward a bit. 20 years ago, when our democracy started, the 10-year-old is now 30 years old. That's 20 years ago, he was 10. Today, he's 30. Well, we talk about this sustainable development goals, and by 2030, there's a component of it that talks about education for all. What are the consequences of continuing in the same trajectory that we are on now for us as a nation in 10 years or in 20?
Sorry, I'm laughing. The assumption is that in 10 or 20 years we'll be alive, that will survive the consequences we are seeing at the moment already. You can't travel anywhere in Nigeria because the consequences will shoot you on the road. The consequences are the things seen getting us into all kinds of situations. But let me even take it a little beyond the 1999. Yes, they are 30 years of age. They've become the adults. They've witnessed a class of leaders for whom leadership is about privilege. They've also witnessed a new crop of leaders recruited within those 20 years who think that carrying somebody's bag or running around and chasing people out of the way when he's passing is a job, and who collect a monthly stipend for doing absolutely nothing. And they know that there are about 500 to 1,500 others who are not in touch with their boss, or who are on his payroll because he's governor, and they are called SAs or PAs, and they are collecting a certain sum every month without pay. My brother, you're creating a new set of leadership that understands position as opportunity to eat without producing anything. Those are some of the things we are living with at the moment. And so you then find that looking forward and looking backward, a coup occurred in 1986, 1983, and within that period, by the time the military left, it was 16 years. So anybody born within that 16 years does not understand the meaning of consultation, discussion, etc. Only understands people can give instructions and others will comply. So the structures for consultative thinking had collapsed. for nearly 20 years. Then you create a democracy. Now, within that democracy, what do you find? Those born, that's why I'm saying let's take it. Those born in 83, how old were they in 99? Who are those leading Nigeria today? Are they not the products of that era? So it is far worse than between 1999 and today. We have a totally dysfunctional socio-cultural environment where leadership is not understood to be service, where service delivery does not exist. And that is why, if I'm in office, okay, we've had the 2021 appropriation bill. I don't know if it's been passed. What did we do with the one of 2020, 2019, 2018? Look at all the money spent between 1999 and today. Has he given us roads? No. Electricity? No. Healthcare? No. National security? No. It is a leadership crisis spanning decades. So when people jump up and say APC, two questions. How many people in APC were not in PDP? Secondly, those complaining, what did they do when they were there? Yes, we don't have money today, but have you forgotten that Rotimi Amechi was the head of the Governors Forum when they took the federal government to court and said, you shouldn't save, give us the money, let us eat. Well, we ate it. Here we are. So in the matter of going forward, we have wrecked the human capital factory of Nigeria. The decision of the government to provide special package for teachers would be a good step in the right direction, but it shouldn't just be about salary. Like all the suggestions made are good. Okay. And while you're talking about this, this incentive to teachers at certain levels, you must ask yourself, should ASU be on strike today? The answer is no. What ASU is asking for, can it be done? The answer is yes.
In fact, so speaking about some of the new realities as we wind down on this one, yes, the balance the policy, but look, with some of the responses from states, you just wonder where all of this is headed. But today, we've seen reports of, researches, surveys conducted in different parts of the world, how they think that a huge percentage actually thought that their investment in degree education was not cost effective. It wasn't a good investment because they didn't actually make the most of it eventually. But back here, the education sector, it's huge, it's very important. How do we get this right? What kind of steps should we be taking? Because many have suggested if we don't actually tinker with the curriculum that we have today, because in 10 years, almost half of these courses we offer here today will be obsolete. Some even say that we need to deconstruct that higher education value chain to be relevant in today's tomorrow, if I could use that. What kind of steps should we be taking? Because beyond this one, there's still a huge gap.
Okay, first of all, on the matter of the number of years spent, investment in a degree, that it's a loss, I disagree. And I think that we must not make the mistake of elevating ignorance to the point of considering it a school of thought or a point of view. A man or woman who is speaking out of ignorance and he says he has a point of view, has no view to point to. What do I mean by that? Education is first of all about development of the human person. It's acculturation to civilization. So let's note that that is the primary goal of education in addition to a profession. So when people say, oh, I went to, and it's become dominant thinking, which emerged within the period of, dictatorship, and has become part of the psyche of the nation. Why did I even go to school? Is a waste of time. Look at the person who didn't go to school. All the money must be there, but that person must make some effort to refine himself or herself. Otherwise, barbarism with a lot of cash will be mistaken for ideal human profile. So I disagree completely with that. If anybody thinks that that's the reason why he shouldn't go to school, then he's getting it all wrong. Okay. That's number one. Number two, on the matter of how did you make the point again? I think I lost the second point you took on after that, Chamberlain. Sorry.
Well, maybe we should just let it go because we have a lot of feedback. Just
no, on the contrary.
I did get the point, actually.
It was a very vital point. Just a few remarks I need to help.
Okay, I saw the report that I was talking about. Look, what do we do? Shouldn't we deconstruct that higher education value chain? Because, we're not saying people shouldn't go to school.
Oh, yes, that is correct. Yes, most of the curricula are totally out of date. And also the teachers themselves are out of date because they are not in touch with current research. Those are the matters, those are the issues of concern. The other thing, of course, is that even going beyond the curriculum, at the global level, we are running academic calendar that is also 50 years out of date. At the time that degree programs were designed for 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years, research was tedious. You go into a library to wade through all kinds of books. Now, the research, it will take you 3 weeks to do. At that time, you can do it in 48 hours. So today, we are running an obsolete academic calendar all over the world.
All right, Dr. Ikechukwu,
a degree in sociology can be done in 2 years, etc.
Okay, we need to anchor at that point. Pardon me, we do thank you for your thoughts. Always a pleasure to have you on, Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. All right, so, wow. This is quite a number of you are sending messages about what you just heard in the last hour or two. Well, this very long one, of course, I can't take all of them. Patrick Inobe, let's see how much of this we can respond to. He says, yes, he appreciates Channels TV for this program on NSAS now. It is also very interesting, the House reform of the legal framework for the police operations in Nigeria. I also want to add that the House should also extend the same reforms to, well, Nigerian customs. The present-day Nigerian customs are worse than SARS operations in Nigeria. The difference lies only in the fact that they do not kill Nigerians, but they kill Nigeria's economy. He went on, but he says, well, even if you have duty payment receipts, they delay and coerce you into paying them bribe. Most times, Nigerians pay bribe to them, but he goes on. The point is, the same thing has got to be done to the customs.
There was one question that he asked. Is it world best practice to have so many customs service on the highway? I was talking about from Lagos to Benin in particular.
Okay.
Obasi says, good morning, Nigerians. I am so bittered, according to him, this morning, hearing from Honorable Ado Doguwa that police uniforms are provided frequently to the police. Has he ever asked for police retirement benefits? The police are human beings and not animals. And the truth is, Nigerian police have been totally abandoned. I wonder if Bassi is a policeman.
Or a family of such.
All these noise really do not help Nigerians. That's according to Oludayo. Now they come on TV and just talk. But can they really implement? I know we are not going to be talking about this again in a few months or years. I hope we are not going to be talking about this again in a few months or years to come.
Barrister George says, we all know that the Nigerian police is at its worst condition, so let the government stop deceiving Nigerians. Chamberlain, please kindly visit the police officers' accommodation around the country, and you'll understand why Nigerian police officers are the way they are. The foundation is faulty, and something needs to be done about it holistically. Well, yeah.
Barrister George just commissioned you.
Oh, yeah. Well, we did raise that concern as well. We've seen the barracks, we've seen so many things, but at the same time, they can't keep harassing and killing Nigerians as a result of that, because there's so many people who have reasons to also misbehave. But the thing is, there has to be a solution, and it has to be well-intended above all else. So, well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for your comments, which we'll continue with them tomorrow, by the way. I'm Chamberlain, also.
I'm Kayode Hikiolu.
And I'm Ayo Makine. Have a great day and be safe.